Imagine living in a world where your name on a piece of paper means certain death, where the most powerful man on earth can decide your fate on a whim, where no amount of loyalty, no amount of service, no amount of sacrifice can save you. Now imagine being three people who found their names on that list, and imagine having only one night to decide. Do you die quietly, or do you fight back? This is the true story of how a concubine, a palace official, and a military commander conspired to assassinate one of history's most brutal dictators, and how their actions would reshape an entire empire. In the year 181, a young man inherited the most powerful throne in the world. His name was Commodus. He was only 18 years old. Unlike his father, Marcus Aurelius, a man remembered as a philosopher and a wise ruler, Commodus had no interest in governing. He had no interest in philosophy. He had no interest in the Senate or the people or the laws of Rome. What Commodus wanted was power in its rawest, most visceral form. He became obsessed with the arena. He forced the Roman Senate to watch him fight as a gladiator. He renamed entire city districts after himself. He demanded that senators address him as Hercules reincarnated. He demanded that they worship him as a god walking among mortals. But his true power came from fear. Commodus understood something fundamental. Fear is more controlling than love. Fear paralyzes. Fear silences. Fear makes people obey without question. So he created an elaborate network of informants throughout the palace and the city. Execution lists circulated constantly. These lists contained the names of anyone Commodus perceived as a threat. A senator who questioned his authority would find his name on a list. A general who refused to bow completely would disappear. Even members of his own family were not exempt from execution. His wife was executed based on false accusations of infidelity. Members of his own household vanished without explanation. Senators were forced to commit suicide rather than face public execution. Entire families were destroyed to send a message to others who might consider disloyalty. For 12 years, an entire generation in the minds of many Romans, the empire lived under constant threat. No one knew whose name would appear on the next list. No one was truly safe. Not the wealthy, not the powerful, not even those closest to the throne. This was the Rome that Commodus created. By late 192, after a dozen years of paranoia and bloodshed, Commodus had descended into complete psychological breakdown. He saw conspiracies everywhere. He believed the Senate was secretly plotting to overthrow him. He believed his own staff was working against him. He believed that betrayal surrounded him on all sides. His paranoia had become absolute, and in his state of complete distrust, he ordered the creation of a new execution list. This list would be different. This list would target the people closest to him, the people he feared most. 3 names appeared at the very top of this list. The first name was Latus, the head of the Praetorian Guard. The Praetorian Guard was Rome's most elite military unit. They protected the emperor. They controlled access to the imperial palace. They had the power to make or break any ruler. Latus commanded them absolutely. When Latus saw his name on that list, he understood what it meant. He had watched this happen before. He had seen what happened to people whose names appeared on Commodus's execution lists. He had seen heads mounted on pikes. He had seen bodies thrown into the river to be consumed by the current. He had seen entire families destroyed. Not just the guilty party, but their wives, something crucial. When Commodus decided someone was a threat, there was no appeal. There was no negotiation. There was no possibility of clemency. There was only death. The third name was Marcia, a concubine who had served in the imperial palace for a decade. For 10 years, Marcia had poured Commodus's wine every evening. She had watched his moods shift from hour to hour. She had observed his patterns. She had studied his habits. She understood him better than anyone alive. And now her name was first on the death list. All three conspirators understood the same brutal calculus. They could not survive if Commodus lived. The three made contact with each other in secret. They met in hidden locations within the palace. They discussed their options, and they reached a single, unavoidable conclusion. The only way forward was to kill the emperor. Marcia became the architect of the plan. She explained to Latus and Eclectus that she had observed Commodus's daily routine for an entire decade. She knew his habits better than anyone. She knew his vulnerabilities. Every single evening, without exception, Commodus followed the exact same ritual. After his bath, he would drink wine from the same cup. It was a routine he never deviated from, a moment of relaxation in his otherwise unpredictable and violent day. That ritual would become his death sentence. Marcia revealed something that shocked both men. She had kept a poison hidden for years. She had acquired it during her earliest days in the palace, understanding on some instinctive level that a woman in her position needed insurance, a backup plan, a final option if everything else failed. On the night of December 31st, Marcia would prepare Commodus's wine with this poison. The poison would weaken him, drain his strength, incapacitate him. But she knew it would not kill him outright. Commodus's body was too strong, too conditioned by years of arena training. So they would need a second person, someone strong enough to finish what the poison started. Someone Commodus trusted. Someone with direct access to his chambers. The answer was Narcissus, a young wrestler and athlete who had trained with Commodus for years. Narcissus had fought the emperor in practice matches hundreds of times. He knew Commodus's fighting style intimately. He knew his strengths and his weaknesses. Latus approached Narcissus with an offer, a fortune in gold, an amount that would make him wealthy for life. Narcissus accepted immediately. December 31st arrived, the final day of the year. Commodus was in an excellent mood. Tomorrow he would walk out into the arena and fight as a gladiator before 50,000 spectators. He would prove to all of Rome that he was the strongest man in the empire. He was confident. He was relaxed. He had no idea that his empire was collapsing around him. That evening, Commodus took his bath. He emerged from the water and prepared for his nightly wine ritual. Marcia prepared the cup the same way she had prepared it countless times before. Same careful pour, same steady hand. But tonight, she added the poison. She presented the cup to Commodus. He took it from her hands without hesitation. There was no reason for suspicion. He had drunk from her hands 1,000 times. He brought the cup to his lips and drank. Within minutes, his body reacted violently. His stomach contracted. The color drained from his face. He began to retch uncontrollably. But something unexpected happened. Commodus did not die. 12 years of arena training had built his body into something extraordinarily resilient. A single dose of poison was not enough. His body purged the toxin. He collapsed to the floor, barely conscious but alive. Fear gripped all three conspirators. If Commodus survived the night, if he recovered even slightly, the retaliation would be absolute. It would not be limited to the three of them. His rage would consume everyone connected to them. Their families would be executed. Their friends would be executed. Latus gave the signal. Narcissus walked through the empty palace corridors. The hallways were silent except for the sound of Commodus retching behind a closed door. He entered the chamber. The most powerful man in the world lay on cold marble, barely conscious. The man who had forced an entire empire to worship him was now helpless. Narcissus's hands closed around Commodus's throat. The emperor's eyes opened. He understood. He tried to fight back. His fingers clawed at Narcissus's arms, but the poison had drained his legendary strength. His muscles refused to obey. The man who had killed 100 lions in the arena could not overcome a single opponent. It lasted only seconds. At 31 years old, on the final day of the year 192, Emperor Commodus died on the floor of his own palace, unable to scream, unable to fight, powerless. The Roman Senate convened immediately. They declared that Commodus's entire reign would be erased from history. Every statue of Commodus was torn down. Every inscription with his name was removed. The arenas he had fought in were renamed. The city districts he had renamed were given their original names back. Rome attempted to erase the memory of his existence entirely. But the empire's problems did not end with Commodus's death. His successor lasted only 86 days before the Praetorian Guard assassinated him and auctioned the title of emperor to the highest bidder. 5 different emperors ruled Rome within 12 months. The empire descended into civil war. It never fully recovered from the instability that Commodus's reign had created. As for Marcia, the woman who orchestrated the emperor's assassination, history was not kind to her. She was executed in 193 AD, just months after Commodus's death. Rome did not build her a statue. History did not celebrate her as a hero. The empire simply moved on, as if she had never existed. The assassination of Emperor Commodus reveals an uncomfortable truth about absolute power. Those who believe themselves untouchable are often the most vulnerable. Commodus ruled through fear and paranoia, but he was ultimately brought down not by an army or a rebellion, but by 3 people who had nothing left to lose and one final decision made in desperation. A woman who served him wine for 10 years, a palace official who knew every secret of the empire, a military commander who understood that survival meant action, and a trainer who had fought beside the emperor hundreds of times. Commodus believed he was Hercules. He believed he was immortal. He believed he was a god. He died on the floor of his own palace, poisoned and strangled, unable to fight back, unable to scream for help. The most powerful man in Rome died the same way every mortal dies, powerless.